Good day, and we're here today in touch with small business. And we have a unique opportunity today because we're actually going to talk about the spirit industry, which is really big in Pittsburgh. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you
really
for having
appreciate
me.
you coming here. David, same, and Prentiss.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off with, Matt, why don't you tell us about your company?
We have actually two companies that are right next to each other. One is Hough's Taproom and Brew Pub, which has been around for 4.5 years roughly in the area of Greenfield, which is right near Squirrel Hill, and in between that and the south side. And we just recently opened up the Kettle Brewing Company, which is right next door, which is the first of its kind in Pittsburgh especially, and it's where you yourself and you guys can come in, make your own beer. We have all the ingredients. We'll guide you through the process. So between the two companies, between the tap room, the restaurant, and the brewery, we have everything from bottles, draft beer, good food, and a place where you guys can come in and make your own beer.
That's great. Prentiss, you kind of a little bit different take. So.
Slightly different. We're not into beer. We're into vodka and to making it not for the consumer who has their own recipe, but ours is our own special recipe. We start with an original mash of Pennsylvania-grown potatoes and create a sort of a high-profile vodka, which originally we thought we would sell into the Pittsburgh and perhaps Philadelphia market, but certainly Buffalo and Cleveland areas. But in fact, we are now available in 16 states as well as Canada. And with every week we produce more and more, we are being distributed into more and more states.
Okay, great. And David, you're kind of like the person that kind of pulls everything together.
Well, Capital pulls it together, and Prentiss, we lent money to him early on to get started. It was interesting when they got started. Two guys with really good ideas, but needed capital, so we provided that. And my organization is a nonprofit lender, something like a bank, but at the same time more like a social investor.
Okay.
And maybe we should name it the Progress Fund.
The Progress Fund. Thank you.
Fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're thinking ahead, as they always say. And you kind of fit in a niche market, correct? You kind of focus in a particular area.
Yeah, the Progress Fund started 15 years ago. We saw that many unique, interesting businesses that made Western Pennsylvania more exciting for the locals and also attracted more people to the areas, tourists, visitors, our outdoor recreational activities, our bed and breakfast, our restaurants, our bars, our taverns. And they have difficulty getting conventional bank loans. You know, a bottle of vodka is a great thing, but it's a little hard as collateral for a bank to get its heads around. And your business, we didn't help, but you're one of, the first 10 in the country? That's unusual and hard for many lenders to get around and figure it out. And we like to do that. That's the kind of stuff we'd like to do, new interesting stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I found fascinating. Matt, you know, talking about that, since we're talking about financing, how did you actually get yourself going, starting out of the gate with this?
Well, I actually wrote a business plan. The restaurant side opened about 4.5 years ago, so I had a business plan for that. Met with a couple banks, so forth. Nothing was really working out. And then my parents kind of read it over, and they said, you know what, we have enough home equity that we could help you get started, get your feet off the ground. So I actually got a loan from my parents for that, which was very fortunate. So thank you, Mom, Dad. Appreciate that if you're watching. And it's worked out really good. Sales have been good. The growth's been good. And what we were able to do actually for the brewery side was fund the brewery side through the restaurant operations. So we had enough cash flow coming in where we were able to distribute it to the brewery side to open it. So as of right now, we were talking kind of off camera, I'll probably be looking for a loan here in the near future for maybe some expansion. So this is a good introduction for me as well.
Well, and that's fantastic, but you show how lots of times when you have a great idea, concept, and everybody always thinks, okay, the lenders aren't lending. But somebody who wants to be successful will always find a way to make it happen, one way or another.
No, I would agree with. I mean, it's unique concepts sometimes require unique funding, and you kind of have to put your head around, juggle a couple things between the long hours, the capital, and stuff. But it worked out pretty good. But I think you guys might see me in the near future, kind of knocking on your doors.
That's great. Prentiss, how did you even run into David? Because he's kind of like a distance away from you.
Yeah, and there are all sorts of intersections. When we started this idea, and we're in the business of writing the business plan, which is all important, we were actually looking at that time to do a distillery not in the city or near the city, but out in the hinterlands, which is really in David's territory. We first looked at a little beautiful town called West Newton,
Okay.
which has all sorts of historical significance in terms of the Whiskey Rebellion going on there. And we looked there not just because we wanted to be in sort of a tourism area, but because the state at that time was offering a program called the First Industries Fund. And it was a two-pronged program for grants and as well as funding, both for agriculture as well as for tourism. And we thought, well, let's take advantage of this. This is what the state wants to encourage. We're happy to make it happen. So the more we wrote that business plan, and one can't stress that enough, keep writing that business plan, keep writing it, keep writing it. We realized that really our true pursuit was making a great vodka, and that all the T-shirts in the world weren't going to help support the business. It would probably just get in the way. At that time, mind you, we wouldn't be able to sell vodka directly to the consumer. We would only sell it to the PLCB in the state. That now has changed, actually. That's 5 years later. But so the idea was we really should just make a great vodka, and then you want to ask yourself, and we spent a lot of time on this one, where do you put a distillery? Do you put it near the potato fields, or do you put it near the warehouse to which you're shipping? And as simple as the answer is, closer to the warehouse, we spent probably 6 months working on that one, because there are energy costs and there are thousands of things that come into play on that.
And so how did you stumble
So
into
having thought of being in West Newton, the Progress Fund very much has that in its domain.
Right.
Actually, I knew David through a different connection altogether. And we started talking, and the idea came up that maybe if DCED, Department of Community and Economic Development, would entertain our proposal for this grant, then the Progress Fund could be the administrator of those funds to us. And that's how we started this more business profile relationship in engaging the Progress Fund with our activities.
And what's kind of interesting, the location you chose, why did you choose that location?
Why we chose, well, this is very funny, because we actually were going to be in what was the old Fort Pitt Brewery in Sharpsburg, a facility that is all industrial grade tile and great drainage, and would have accommodated our distillery quite well, until we walked over to Glenshaw Glass Company on Route 8 in Glenshaw, obviously, asking them for bottles for our business, and they kind of laughed at us because we only wanted 10,000, 15,000 bottles. This is a plant that's making 400,000 bottles a day. To stop production, just do 200 or 100,000 or even 10,000 bottles was just like not going to happen for them.
I think I had the same conversation with them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You
I said, really?
Yeah.
And so at the same meeting, Bill Kelman, who owns Kelman Bottles, which is now the name of that company, showed us space that was just as good as what we thought we were going to get into in Sharpsburg. The idea of having a distillery very close to where our bottles might have been produced was rather appealing, and so we situated ourselves there and have been there ever since.
So you developed a beautiful partnership.
We did, yeah.
With all, and that's what I found really fascinating when I went over there.
Yeah, we may be one of the only distilleries in the country, if not the only distillery in the country, whose bottles are made within 100 yards of where they get filled.
Yeah. And that's funny. Did you have to spend much time on the design of it?
We did. We spent enormous amounts of time on the design of it. As simple as it is,
It takes a lot to get it simple.
it takes a lot. It really does. Yeah. No, we engaged a great ad agency, GBL at the time. It's now known as Chemistry, with the premise that we wanted to come to market with a package that said you are buying the vodka, you are not buying the bottle. Less is more, simplicity rules. You can take any number of concepts that we apply to it. And this is the result of their hard work, and it has played out very, very well for us.
Oh, that's great. Matt, did you go through the same challenges when you were trying to decide who was going to supply you bottles?
Yeah, on the brewery side, we were going back and forth between doing, your regular 12-ounce bottles or 22-ounce bottles. And a couple of the other brew on premises, they use 22s. And we kind of kept looking into it more and more. After you're done brewing your first time around, when you come in, there's about a 2 to 3 week gap before you come back and bottle your beer. So it's fermenting during that time. So one of the things the reason we went for 22-ounce bottles after it was all said and done, which I actually spoke to Glenshell at the time, they didn't make 22-ounce. So we get them in from a different source, but it's easier for the customer to fill. Plus, we also found out that they're sharing their beer after they're making it. So not only are they just opening one for themselves, but it'd be kind of like us hanging out, opening a bottle of beer, pouring out a couple glasses. So we're actually doing the 22-ounce bottle. And apparently there was a glass shortage, I guess, in this past year as well. So it was kind of difficult to try to find 22s, but we actually get them from a supplier up in Cleveland, and they ship them down. So we don't have we kind of have them put all over the brewery right now because of space. We're a little bit confined, but the 22 ounces have worked out pretty good.
Do you have to order in a particular amount?
We bring in a couple pallets at a time,
Okay.
3 or 4. You're getting, basically when you brew, you get 5 cases of beer, or it's about 60 bottles of 22 ounce. So it's a little bit of a challenge stacking them, and it's all hand done. We don't have the forklift or anything. So after the pallets dropped off, we're breaking it down right now and bringing them inside. But it's probably about 3 or 4 pallets worth at a time, so it's a couple thousand bottles.
Okay. And did you have to go through the process of choosing color, or did you just say this is a color I was going to go with no matter what?
But yeah, we actually went with, instead of doing a clear bottle, we actually chose an amber colored bottle. And what that does is that keeps the light out of your beer, so it helps maintain its quality and freshness. Plus the label that we have that goes on it too makes it really stand out more on the amber colored versus a clear bottle.
And that's interesting that you bring up the label. Prentiss, yours is, as we call it, simplistic. It's just like look right through it. Was there a lot of talk about trying to design some unique label or anything, or everything was tied to the bottle design?
We actually did a series of interventions in restaurants with different names for our brand, as well as different bottle shapes and different bottle designs, interweaving all those different names and so forth. A really interesting process when we did it over the course of 5 different restaurants over 5 different nights, and stood there at the bar with our bottles lined up and asked people, what do you think? Without failure, everyone would pick their favorite shape of bottle. Nobody was looking at the name of it. So we realized, you know what, maybe the name isn't as all important as we think it is. But they did ultimately select a bottle design, which we do not use. The hardest thing really was coming up with a name that we could brand and trademark and register as a trademark. And I keep saying, it's no wonder that drugs in the market now have a miscellula afflictlicin, because, it's not been trademarked. You can take almost any name and you will get challenged on a trademark constantly. So what we did is we wound up using family names, Boyd and Blair. Blair was my great-grandfather. Boyd is my business partner, Barry Young's late father-in-law. 2 guys who worked awful hard, but knew how to have fun on the weekends. And so we named our brand after them. By having used a family name, you're sort of 80% by rights there towards your trademark, so that's what happened. But the other process that has to go on with a bottle such as ours is it has to pass through federal hands of the TTB. They have to approve what is called a COLA. It's a certificate of label authenticity, whereby there's no language on the bottle that is misleading. Words like pure are not allowed on spirits because no spirit is actually 100% pure. And there are
Sure
a bunch of
tastes
other
that
words.
way.
Well, thank you. But there are a bunch of other words you're not allowed to use, and the configurations of how those words are used. For example, potato vodka is supposed to be on 2 separate lines, but we rebelled against that, and we won our little fight with the TTB on that one. But so many restrictions, and so every word, every spacing on that bottle had to be approved by a federal authority before we could distribute it to the public. And I wonder what happens, because you do a lot of private label beer bottles. And I guess you're not covered by the same.
No, it's a little bit different. But one of the things we had to do, we actually have a label, and it has the story of the brewery on one side with it, and then it has the government warnings on it as well. But there's an area in there that's roughly 3 inches by 4 inches where you can customize that. So if you want to put your picture in there, if you want to call it, the birthday beer, whatever you would like, you can customize that area of it. Everything else is pretty much standard on it as well. We've done a couple for weddings, so we've had the wedding picture in there with their date. We actually changed the story of the brewery to the story of how they met on the side of it. So instead of people giving out party favors of whatever it may be, candy or something, and now they have a bottle that they came in, they brewed together, it's sitting on the table instead of like champagne, and they kind of pop it and everybody gets a drink from it. So our labels are a little bit different. We do have an in-house graphic designer where she customizes that area for you. And when you come back to bottle your beer, they're already printed out, ready to go. You just have to put them on.
So that's kind of, you would never think a graphic designer working at a brewery full time.
Yeah, she does pretty good with everything.
To be such an intricate part to your success with the concept.
Well, you got to ask this guy, in lending money, what impressed me is the 2 experience levels that Barry and Prentiss had, and what I think made the company. They weren't brewers, they weren't distillers.
Sure. It is kind of, we're a fortunate situation. The idea had always floated in the back of my mind, but it wasn't until Barry called me one afternoon trying to think what else he might do with his life. He very successful in terms of being a CEO under a for-profit division for a large medical facility, but wanting to do something a little more fun and exciting in his life. And I knew he had a chemistry background as well as his pharmaceutical background. And I have none of those skills. I am not a scientist. I've always come from a sort of an advertising creative background. And I thought, if we were to take something like a locally made vodka and bring it to market, I would definitely need his skills to make this happen. And I think he would need my skills too to bring it together. So it really was a good commingling of not opposite, but uncomplimentary or complementary skills that
So
made it
why
happen.
vodka?
Why vodka? Well, I've always been a vodka drinker, that's
Okay.
why. It could just as well have been bourbon.
That's what I was curious about. Because I sat there and I thought, okay,
The thing about bourbon is it has to age, so vodka we could get to market right away.
That makes a big difference. And David, you brought something out is, you're the person that's coming in trying to make these deals happen. And they have to convince you through the process. And I know over the years you've seen numerous people come with the ideas with the distilleries and what they want to do in that. What's the kind of make or break you to kind of like, I'm willing to go here with this one, but this one I'm just not willing to touch?
Well, we've lent over $40 million, which is a fair amount of money, fair amount of decision making, because our average loan is $100,000 to $200,000. So it's a lot of people we've met. But they're all unique, just like these 2 guys. They all have a plan, and if they don't have a plan, we usually don't talk much more. But so you get a sense of their experience level, their commitment. Are they putting some of their money, or is family backing them? So if things go awry or bad, which they always do, there's somebody to back them up. And they show the character to continue on. And they didn't make vodka, but his marketing background and Barry's financial skills, it was obvious that they were going to pull it together. And they were doing all the research. And I think that's key too. I think you were talking about, you were going different places across the country looking at how people were doing in Vancouver. That kind of research, that kind of dedication shows us that the person's committed. we don't want to lend money to people that are going to fail because now we lost the money. They've wasted a lot of their time and their money too. Personal money. They lose houses. They lose all sorts of stuff. They lose years of their lives. So we try to find those people that are going to be successful. And we're lucky. Only about 2% of the people we've ever lent money to have failed, or we've lost, I should say, 2% of our money. But it's the plan too, as you talked about. We force people to write a business plan, and it's not for us, it's for them. We want to read the plan to see if they were thoughtful, that they looked at all the edges of their company, that they understood their company, and they were looking at it with full open eyes. When they start writing to me and trying to say, we're going to convince this guy to lend us money, we'll read through that. What I want to do, and what really my staff does, I don't do it, they're reading this saying, they have done their due diligence. They understand their business. They can answer the questions. And that's what the business planning process is. Not for the banker. It's a self-book, if you would.
David asked us some great questions after we had sort of submitted our efforts to him that, I think we had answers for him. It wasn't, but, those good questions, that relationship of back and forth really tells you, am I thinking right? Have I covered all my bases here? Because a good business plan will do that. You will be able to answer any question that anybody might ask you if you've done your business plan well. And it won't just serve your own purpose, it'll serve the purpose of the business. And where you might be 3 years down the road or 8 years down the road, doesn't matter. You got to have to think that all the way through.
Yeah, and what I found. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think it's a great guideline, having a business plan. And also, as you're opening your business and running your business, and you take a look back at it to make sure you're on track or where you're changing, too, really helps, because we kind of started off pretty good, and then we started to veer a little bit one way, went back to the plan and kind of corrected some things, and it's been a constant evolution of what you're doing with your business. It's not necessarily set in stone, but it's a great guideline on what you need to follow to get to that end goal.
Yeah, and it helps you adjust during, as we saw, economic changes, pricings, whatever it may be, audience changes, moving into the region and everything like that. But I was curious, Matt, with yours, what made you transition to the Copper Kettle originally when you had a very successful bar and restaurant going? What made you make that transition?
It kind of happened one night, actually. The restaurant on the bar side is a very big craft beer bar. We're one of the top big craft beer bars in the city of Pittsburgh.
What's a craft beer? So in case people that don't understand.
Craft beer, it's not necessarily import that you're bringing in, like a beer from Belgium or even Corona, from Mexico is considered an import. Craft beer is locally made on a smaller scale, basically. So it's not your Miller Lights, your Coors Lights. It's more something like Penn Brewery is considered a craft. So it's kind of made locally on a small scale. So we carry a lot of different breweries. We actually have 61 taps right now with a whole bunch of different styles and different breweries from all over the nation, a lot of different bottles. And that segment has just grown and grown. I was speaking with a couple of the distributors, Frank Fuhr's wholesale basically, and we were going over some numbers talking, and craft beer is up about 15% year to date, roughly. And a lot of the imports are kind of down if you take out Corona and things. So it's a growing market, and which with Boyd and Blair too, I'm sure you guys are seeing growth in.
I'll add another figure for you because I just came out about a month ago that the commercial brewers, the Anheuser-Busch's, are down like 4 or 5% this year.
And they're even looking to try to figure out how to get part of that small craft side. But the Copper Kettle side, basically, I was out traveling with my other job, and I saw this. I walked in to grab a bite to eat when I was on the road, and I just saw this system and started to learn more about it. Thought it was pretty unique, and came back and started trying to find one for sale. And I found it on the internet. And now this is the bad part. I didn't have a building, I didn't have anything, but I ended up buying it. So we stored it somewhere else, and then luckily the building for sale, the building next door came for sale, and we ended up purchasing that, and then so everything's combined right now. But we just saw how craft beer.
Some people are lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't put that in your business plan. But we just saw the trend with craft beer, the way it was going, and we eventually wanted to get to be our own brew pub or have a location that was a brew pub. But we thought this was a good, unique step towards that. One, we could have customers come in, brew their own beer, learn about beer, which might help the restaurant side as well. And two, it was a way, since it's a small batch system, you're only making a 50-liter barrel at a time, we could experiment and try to make our own kind of beer for future growth down the road. So it was a good fit for what we did, and especially with the demographic that we had coming into our bar and restaurant, it worked out really well.
So are you taking the R&D tax credits with that development work?
Yeah, trying to take every tax credit we can get. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun too. One of the things I didn't actually bank on, and it's really worked out really nice. We've had customers come in, home brewers come in, but we actually get a lot of corporate events coming in. They're doing is team building exercises, bringing together. They're doing it with interns as well. So there's this whole new demographic we've been opened up to now with this business.
No, and that's kind of fascinating how things stumble, as we say, and you create yourself a new market share, that team building by doing brewing together. You know? Usually it's a whitewater trip, or let's bungee off together or something like that, or trust me, fall backwards.
Yeah.
So that's totally different. But you said something that was interesting. You said your other job.
Oh yeah, I had another job, worked for a very good company, which I really enjoyed. I worked for Nucor Steel, selling steel, and was traveling up and down pretty much the East Coast, and really enjoyed it. It was a really good company, and I just left that job actually around March, and I came over to the bar and the brewery full time. So I'm pretty much overseeing both operations, and my brother Greg is running the day-to-day operations on the brewery side. So we have, and it's been a learning process with the growth and trying to work the two back and forth, but it feels really nice to finally, through all the efforts you've put in for so many years, go down and enjoy your own business and grow it more.
Now, did your brother and you always get along?
Yeah, we kind of had to. He's a little bit bigger than me, even though he's my younger brother. But we always got along. Our family's pretty close. My sister works down there as well. I have a couple cousins down there. So it's we're almost up to about 31 employees down there.
I'll give you great testimony. I think 2.5 years ago, your brother invited me over to Hough's to just feature Boyd Blair. And it was a hockey night, and it was just, it was a wonderful experience for me to, get a whole other audience there to watch a hockey game. It was quite wild that night, as a matter of fact. But, just reaching out in the intersections and so forth, it's really cool.
Yeah, the relationships that people build, it's so critical. I always tell people, if you think that you look at everybody as your competition, you're going to fail. Yeah. They actually can become your best friend at creating success for you further along dealing with that. But Prentiss, it's kind of interesting. How did you decide on Pennsylvania potatoes and not Idaho potatoes or Maine potatoes?
Well, really out of loyalty to the funding that we got, we are not obligated in any way to actually use Pennsylvania potatoes. But hey, it's 2012. Why wouldn't we? I mean, they are great potatoes. Potatoes, fact, are really grown everywhere. I like to ask people, so Idaho and Maine are the famous states for potatoes, but do you know why? And they want to say that because the potatoes are so much better there. Well, no, it's because they really can't grow much of anything else in those states. Potatoes will grow. Pennsylvania is one of the top producers of potatoes.